Bootcamp Podcast, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have a special guest. We're going to get to this thing on the table. It's probably hard to keep your eyes off it, but this is why Amanda Fisher is here. All right, Dr. Amanda Fisher. I don't want to not say that so people know that you're the real deal. So tell us who you are, what do you specialize in, and then how long you've been doing it.
All right. I'm Dr. Amanda Fisher, pelvic floor physical therapist out of the Kansas City area. I've been a physical therapist since 2011 and kind of started diving into pelvic floor physical therapy around 2009, just while dealing with my own issues of pelvic floor dysfunction. I was running like 6 to 7 half marathons a year training just to get through the stress of physical therapy school.
6 to 7 a year?
Ridiculous.
Oh my gosh.
Ridiculous. I wouldn't advise that for anybody. But I was an athlete growing up and knew I wanted to do something to help people with their bodies. And yeah, lo and behold, I found pelvic floor physical therapy was kind of a specialization, a niche within PT. So I started taking classes while in school on my Christmas breaks and spring breaks, and then I basically begged my first boss to let me develop a women's health, is what it was called back then, type program for their orthopedic PT clinic.
Oh, wow.
And so I've been doing it ever since. And I've been working with athletes ever since then, but I was getting a lot of high school and college age kids that I would just start asking questions like, are you peeing your pants while you're kicking a soccer ball or when you land during gymnastics? And they would open up and we would start to figure out that back then, like, Kegels were the only answer, and realizing like these chicks are strong as heck. Yeah. There's no way they have weak pelvic floors. So started thinking about it outside the box. Yeah. Been doing it ever since. So
she also is a Burn Bootcamp member. So shout out, what location do you go to?
Yes, Burn Bootcamp Lee Summit. It's over on the Missouri side. What?
Yeah, Lee Summit, Missouri. I think this topic is so perfect now. I mean, it has been for a while, but obviously, the majority of our Burn Bootcamp members and probably listeners right now are female. Yep. Right? And I'm glad she's on because she's been here all day recording content, and we'll get to that in a second, but I've learned a lot from her, even not as a female, but trying to relay that information to a female as a male is like, dude, you don't know what you're talking about. And they want to hear it from you. So since you've been a member of Burn Bootcamp Lee Summit, what are some things you've seen that women have struggled with that you're trying to educate them on? So if you had to list like the top 3 to 5 things that you see on a daily basis, not only in the gym, but you know, in your practice that they're having trouble with.
Yeah. Majority of them are dealing with bladder urgency. So maybe they're not peeing their pants yet, but they feel that sense that if they keep going, they're going to. Yeah. And I'll see them stop doing jumping jacks or jumping knee tucks or, you know, some type of exercise that I would love to just be able to put my weights down or stop what I'm doing to be able to go coach them through that while I'm there. Jumping jacks, star jumps, they're peeing their pants with those activities. So you'll see like these, like, excuse my language, like half-ass type movements. It may happen for like 5 reps and then they stop. And you're like, I wonder if they're stopping because they're peeing their pants. Yeah. Pressure. I see a lot of postpartum women that are dealing with pressure down in the vagina. So usually the pelvic floor might not be quite ready to go at that hard of type of movements that we want to do because we are usually competitive athletes in nature. And as a mom athlete myself, like I've been there, I push myself a little too hard. I've got to know when to mod down and to listen to my body on, you know, the body, what it's supposed to be doing, which I go over in the videos that we'll talk about in a little bit. You've got to listen to when it's not doing the right thing and when to mod down, and so you can stay in the gym and support it.
What are some things that, you know, obviously as a doctor, like educated on this, but that term mod down sometimes has a negative connotation of somebody that doesn't want to do that because they think, oh, it's the easiest way. But what are some things that you know that in the moment you're like, all right, I should make sure I mod down on this exercise? So what are some signs or symptoms that you see for yourself?
So for myself is like the pelvic stability. If we're doing an exercise maybe where I'm in a plank position and I notice I can't get my hips to stop rocking, I might slow it down just a tad and I'm checking on, can I exhale? Can I connect my core with a little hip bone to hip bone action to then give me a little stability to keep going? And if that helps for a little bit, awesome. If not, it's like I've lost my endurance with my core strength. So then I'm going to mod down, not as a negative, but it's trial and error, as if I would go out for a run or do another activity. You're just figuring out where your body's ending point is and then kind of mod down so you can keep going to build up that stamina of endurance. We're just modding it down to do so. And then hopefully next time, like, can I get more reps before I start to mod down? And you're kind of playing this trial and error game with yourself until you get a little bit further each time, instead of doing it to a point where we are peeing our pants, or we're creating that pelvic pressure, or we're increasing back pain, where we're shutting off that core. I would rather somebody mod down to then build up that endurance for that 45-minute class than keep them where they're like, well, I'm out.
Yeah. So you said urgency, pressure, and the last one was form, low back pain.
Yep.
And that's a huge thing, I think. We always talk about form a lot, but as a female, you probably don't realize that those things are really correlated.
Yeah.
Right? If your form breaks down on a lot of exercises, your pelvic floor will also go too. You named a lot of conditioning exercises. What are some of the strength exercises you see women struggling with from a pelvic floor or core perspective that if they just did a couple of things that you're going to teach them, it will help them so much more?
I think maintaining your ribs stacked over the pelvis with even a shoulder press where you're going up. A lot of times I'll see women want to lift the heavier weights, which I'm there too. I want to as well. But when I notice that I'm stretching out my core to be able to get that weight up, we're lengthening out the core. Think like a pregnancy belly. It's lengthening out the core. So it's not firing well for you. You're tightening up in the back. Can I drop the weight so that my form stays better? And it's then connecting, because when we're stretching it out, your breath is not connecting with your core to automatically get it to fire. When we can get it stacked and actually exhale as we're lifting the weight up, then that core is going to contract and stabilize your body while you're moving through that motion. And the same goes for leg day. It's, step ups or pistol squats. Do I find myself rounding my back with those type of positions? Or an RDL would be a perfect example. Where people will typically twist their pelvis and maybe they're rounding a little bit. Then their core's not really firing for them. So it's really focusing, like if you're going to do a single leg like we did today in leg day, use like a burn bar to hold on for stability so that pelvis can stay stable for you and you can actually do it correctly. It's not a mod down. It's kind of supporting you in a positive way if you want to continue to work on that balance. But then as you're using that burn bar, if you notice like now I'm starting to creep off to the side again, then let's mod down and put that foot back down for a little bit more stability.
That's what I've seen also, like training people. It's like when you get to one arm or one leg exercises, like the unilateral stuff, your core has to work over time. Because you've got to stabilize the other part of your body. Compared to if you're working both legs at the same time, both arms at the same time, usually you're in a more stable position to move the weight, but definitely shoulder press.
I love unilateral or single leg because you really get an idea of where's your strong leg at. Like are we right-handed or left-handed dominant? The legs are in that too. And that plays into the pelvic floor. So you really want to build up that stamina on the side that's a little bit more wonky because there's probably a little bit of dysfunction in there in the hip or in the pelvic floor muscles.
I heard some of these today. What are your best cues so if I'm listening to this podcast and I want to remember 3 cues always that's going to help me no matter what to make sure I'm in the proper position. What are those cues? They're a lot better than mine. I can't say these because I'm not a doctor talking like this, but she can. They're great. What are they?
So the ones that come to mind for me are ribs stacked over the pelvis. So that works on your form. Exhale on exertion, which I'm sure you're safe to say.
Double E, exhale on exertion.
But
that's
then
easy.
My favorite one is tits over toes. So we're allowing, if you've got, good supportive sports bra on, can I keep my boobs just facing forward like they're on a shelf? Or do I need to move them a little bit more forward, tits over toes, as we are stepping up onto a box or as we're jumping to keep our front portion of the pelvic floor supporting our bladder, essentially.
What are your favorite protocols to do as just the member, the non-doctor? What are your favorite protocols to hit?
That goes hand in hand. I love a leg day.
Love a leg day?
I love a leg day because it connects with the pelvic floor. I have a history of bladder prolapse, and leg day was the one thing that helped me get rid of my symptoms.
If someone doesn't know what that means.
Bladder prolapse is where you can feel pressure in your vagina like there's like a used tampon down there. So you probably would never have that kind of conversation with a female, okay? So you feel this pressure down there, and you can feel it with movements at a camp. And it's uncomfortable, and then your brain starts negatively getting to you, like, I'm not strong enough, I can't do this, blah, blah, blah. Well, I figured out my mom butt was keeping me from supporting my pelvic floor. So really working on the slower controlled eccentric loading. So that's loading it very slowly down.
Stretching the muscle.
Stretching out the pelvic floor with the glutes, and then blowing out and getting it to engage. I love the tits over toes with that as well, because it just hits that front portion of the pelvic floor that supports the bladder. So again, that sports bra is lifting it up and holding it where it needs to be. And it sits on your pubic bone, and then those muscles get to strengthen up with that butt. And your butt, I explained this in Kansas City because I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan. Your butt and your pelvic floor, it's like Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, all right?
It's a good
analogy.
You
need them both. And when they're connecting well, things are going well for the Chiefs. When they're not connecting well, it's a terrible game. So you have to have your Patrick Mahomes and your Travis Kelce really connecting with leg day. That's why I love that protocol.
I think it's funny. I mean, I think if you talk to the majority of women, they're always like, I just want a better butt, or I just want to get my butt stronger and bigger. I don't think they realize the amount of benefits, not only from an aesthetic standpoint, but like, if you build up the glutes, right, you most likely will never have lower back pain, right, because you got that shelf where that sits on. People don't realize that it is the biggest muscle in your lower body. That glute max is big inherently, and getting that stronger. If you build the biggest muscle stronger and stronger, then the rest of your body will get strong, even connecting the pubic bone to that. So, so leg day. What about a conditioning day? What's your favorite conditioning day?
Probably body weight.
Really?
I do.
Okay. Why is that?
I don't know. I feel like I get my legs to kick in with that one a little bit more. So it might be like, I don't know, jump squats or something that I feel like, okay, I'm getting my glutes a little bit more activated. And that's one too that I'll see a lot of people start to shift forward onto their toes. So they're on their, and you would think, oh, toes, she's going tits over toes. No, people don't do that. They tend to lengthen out their abdomen again when they start doing jump squats and get tired. And you got to really make sure that you're still getting that pelvis deep to work the pelvic floor with those glutes.
I think you kind of answered this first question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If you told someone not to skip these protocols because these protocols will specifically strengthen your core and pelvic floor, what are those protocols? Like these are non-negotiables. 2024, make sure you don't skip these. What are they?
So we just had this conversation with my last patient before I flew out here, and she's a postpartum mom. She wants to get back into a burn boot camp fitness type class. And I said, the first two right now she can hands down go to start building up strength is leg day and arm day. Because we've gone over how to fire the core, what to do. And those are two non-negotiables because she's got two kids at home, a toddler and a new baby. She's already lifting up basically kettlebells at home and moving. And I need her to build up her core strength and arm strength with doing that. So those are two before she talks to the trainers in case she can't get in there to say, hey, I'm a postpartum mom. Can you help mod down some of these activities or help me watch form? Those are two that I want her there at. Everything, I love when my patients come to me before we step back into burn, just so I can go over the basics with them, how to connect their core to see what their core is doing. If you all don't know, pelvic floor physical therapists, they typically do an internal exam to assess pelvic floor muscle tissues and assess strength. So how I do that with my patients is if I know they want to get back to the gym, what kind of weights are you going to be lifting? We'll do an internal assessment standing up in that position so I can know, are things shifting down? Are we having prolapse or are we leaking while lifting that weight? So I can say, hey, I feel comfortable with you lifting the 10 or 12 pounds. You're not quite ready for 15s yet, but let's give it a couple weeks and then we'll get you there. So I don't know.
I'm so glad you said it because I feel like a lot of females that I've trained are like, they'll always come to leg day. They won't go to arm day, push, pull.
Oh gosh, you need arm day.
So explain why a female, for all the reasons they might not know, like don't skip upper body day. Why?
So there are 5 different movements that I have all my patients focus on when they're with me in pelvic floor. One of them is a hinge, so that's more leg day. Squat, more leg day. Push and pull and carry. Those 3 are typically upper body or your push-pull days because you are constantly, if you're a new mom or even just doing household chores, you are emptying your dishwasher and pulling it to you, and then you're putting those dishes away or the laundry out of the laundry dryer into the basket, and then you're carrying that somewhere. people are doing these activities all day long, but they're not working on their form the way that they should. So I typically will say, go to those days. Those are non-negotiables for the pelvic floor, but then now transition that into your home life as well. And check yourself. Like, we can all do it poor posture and just efficiently by...
Yeah, how's my posture right now? Do I need to sit up a little bit?
Sit on those sits bones.
Okay.
And we can do it with poor posture and empty our dishwasher just to get it done. Or while I'm doing it at home, I can think, okay, what would I do in the gym? This is kind of like this position where I'm pulling the weight to me, but it's just a glass dish.
Yeah.
Let's fire it up properly and, you know, think about getting into position, pulling it, squeezing those shoulder blades together to help support you. I mean, these are everyday movements everybody's always doing. Get there.
Yep. So Amanda's been a trooper all day. This is like the last thing we've done today, but before this, she has been shooting so much burn on demand content specifically for core and pelvic floor. We really go over all the protocols and she gives you really tips and tricks on certain movements that you'll probably see within that protocol and, to make sure your pelvic floor and your core is firing the right way. So if I'm listening to this, like, man, that really interests me to learn. Like, what are some of the things that they'll be able to learn on your content for burn on demand for core and pelvic floor?
Probably everything that we went over today is what I do with patients when they come into the clinic.
Yep.
And then if they had been my patient and I'm seeing them in the gym at a class, it is not uncommon for that person to come up to me and be like, hey, and this is after a 4:40 a.m. class, that they're like, yo, Amanda, I wanted to let you know that I tried this and I got to this many more reps of doing it before I fatigued out or before I started peeing my pants. And I love that. Like, we're having this conversation at Burn Boot Camp of what we went over with me in the clinic. Or I will follow them there. This has not been unknown to do either. Well, I'll go with them on a Saturday camp or to a free camp, have them sign up for a free week to see how they're moving during camp. So then we can talk about it in the clinic too. But everything we went over in the videos today are tips and tricks or little cues that I like to pull in with them. Some might be a little bit more vulgar than others, like tits over toes, but that, like, to me, it gets them giggling.
Yeah.
I want them to not be so serious about it. These are just muscles, and they need to move for you and with you to keep you nice and strong and stable.
Yeah. I think you guys are going to be really surprised on the information that you're going to get. I think we had people with her on camera, and even women who have given birth multiple times. They've learned a lot just listening to Amanda and not knowing that they were doing things maybe a little off, and then they would hit her cues and be like, oh yeah, that does feel better. So you guys are going to feel like you're in the clinic with her, information, and she brings out her anatomy. She'll tell you what muscles you're feeling, where they're at. And you're going to learn a lot from her, and that content will be coming in February. How excited are you for that?
I'm pumped.
You are pumped. I'm going to close this out with, if someone is listening to this, if a female's listening to this and scared to walk into a pelvic floor physical therapy, tell them how would they get over that hesitation to finally just, all right, I have these problems. I know I have these problems, but I'm scared to admit them to another person, or scared, you know what I mean? Just hesitation. What would you say to them?
So hesitations that people typically walk in is, I don't want to do an internal exam. We don't have to do an internal exam. There's a lot we can see from movement. So come in and just get your movement assessed and analyzed to see what we can improve on to just start improving your symptoms. Because it's not as scary as you think.
Yeah.
We become your little pelvic floor bestie, have lots of conversations about TMI subjects that you probably aren't talking about anybody with except for us. But I always joke, like, my male patients that come in, Matt's not a patient, but I'm pointing at him because he's a male. When they come in because they've had their symptoms for 3 weeks. My women, when they come in, it's been 6 or 7 years. So do it sooner rather than later, because then you can, start enjoying movement or be able to enjoy fun with your kids that maybe you have been holding off on because of the symptoms that you've been having. And then definitely come in, and if you're like avoiding certain protocols or camps because of pelvic floor, get your butt in so you can get back in the gym and enjoy your community.
Yeah. You guys heard it there. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate
Thanks
it, guys.
for having me.
Again, this content is going to be up Burn on Demand in February. We're so pumped to have an actual expert in the field, fellow Burn Boot camper, and you're going to learn a lot from her. All right, so you've been doing this all day, so I might as well let you do it again, taking us out.
All right, let's end on 2 claps. 1, 2.
Bye, guys.
2 claps on 2.